So Leah says that she is escorted to a secure room where the OT level 3 materials are kept.
Okay.
She describes the labyrinth of rooms that she has to go through, which are all locked and secured. When she finally gets to the room where the documents are held, she is chained to the table. She is then handed a single manila envelope with a single piece of paper in it, which she then reads in silence. In summary, this is what it says.
Oh, we actually know what it said.
Welcome to the Compendium, an assembly of systems, schemes, and mysteries that can't be measured on an e-meter.
Electronic meter? Okay. Well, I have no clue what that introduction is.
Well, we'll have to wait and see then. Shall we get on with introductions?
Let's do it.
For those of you tuning in for the very first time, I'm your host, Kyle Reese.
And I'm your co-host, Adam Cox.
You're listening to the Compendium, an assembly of fascinating and intriguing things. We are a weekly variety podcast where I, Kyle Reese, tell Adam Cox all about a topic that I think he'll find both fascinating and intriguing. And I think today's episode, you're definitely going to find intriguing.
Interesting.
How's your week been?
Good, thank you. Yeah. One thing I found out about this week is about, I don't know, I'm not really on TikTok, but there is an egg craze going on. So what apparently parents are doing is they have their kids in the kitchen and they're filming and they say, I'm going to crack this egg. And they crack it on their kid's head. These poor kids, I haven't actually seen any yet. So I'm going to, after this, probably have a little browse. But I can't believe people are doing that to their kids and putting that up as entertainment.
It's that moment of betrayal. And the kids, they don't cry. Some of the kids are crying, but they're not crying because they've had an egg cracked in their head because it's not that sore. It's the realization that someone that they trust and love and is supposed to nurture them has just done that to them.
Yeah. And then they put it online.
It is funny. I can't believe you've come to today's episode with that as an all the latest things topic, but you haven't actually seen any of the videos.
No, well, not yet. But the reason I know about it is apparently medical experts have been advising that you shouldn't be doing that to your child.
No.
Because one, salmonella.
Okay.
Two, that it could invoke some side effects such as bruising and spreading germs. So yeah, that's the news articles that I read about it. One clinical director of child, adolescent and family services, some woman in New York apparently, she said, as a one-off experience such as the egg prank, it's unlikely to have any long-term ramifications. So carry on.
Good response, but I can say out of all the medical kind of potential issues like the salmonella and the bruising and stuff, that's nothing compared to the long-term emotional trauma that some of these kids are going to have, because it is really cute.
Yeah, they're going to have to go for counselling.
Yeah, they will do. I can see how this could be the thing that spawns the next generation of homicidal psychopath teenagers and young adults.
And it all started with an egg.
With an egg. So for my all the latest things this week, again, as usual, killing some time, browsing through Reddit, I came across this post, which the poster says, I'm a male, and somehow this topic came up, and I told a female friend that I have peed in the shower. And I thought that everyone else did this, and she was so grossed out. And she said that she has never done this. And I told her like 99 times out of 100, I probably pee in the shower. And he's asking, are people peeing in the shower?
This feels we need to ask. We need a poll.
I'm ahead of you there.
Okay.
I asked a whole bunch of our listeners.
Really?
Whether or not they peed in the shower. You ready for some?
Okay.
It's a great question. And I'm honoured to be part of the research. Lawrence was all time. No hesitation. And I don't know if it's just me or more girls in general. I would tend to try and pee beforehand, but then if it pops up in the shower, I'm not going to avoid it. So no qualms, no problems.
Okay.
Yeah. And the thing is, though, overwhelmingly, out of a lot of the people that we spoke to, it's a divided household.
Right.
Typically, the men, no question, we in the shower. The women, no. So we had another young lady who wrote in.
I don't know if this is a girl thing, but I genuinely have never had any feeling that I've wanted to do that. Whereas, little funny story for you, Nick was showering and I just opened the shower door slightly just to ask him something. I couldn't find where the light bulbs were or something silly like that. Okay. And I went in and asked him. And then as I closed the shower door, I was like, that smelled like piss. That was weird. And then got the light bulb and whatever. And then later on, we were watching telly and I was like, Nick, did you pee in the shower earlier? And he went, oh no. And then we had a conversation about it. And he said he does it quite often. But not anymore, apparently, because I've said, please don't.
Okay.
Please don't. So what do you do? What do you do in the shower?
I try and avoid peeing in the shower. I don't want to do it. But if all of a sudden it comes on, like relax, whatever, then I might do. But largely I wouldn't do it.
How often does that happen?
I'd imagine it's like once a month, if that. If I did
once a month? Wow. Okay. Do you want to hear a couple more?
Well, what about yourself?
Well, let's see what this young lady said. So she had a chat with her husband.
I feel like you're just avoiding the subject there.
They both agree that if they need a wee prior to getting into the shower, they will, of course, go to the toilet first. But peeing in the shower doesn't really bother them at all. They felt that if the urge is coming on, they will do it. So I did ask my mum.
Oh, God.
So Janice Cameron, good old mum, she said without question she wees in the shower every time.
What? She said that?
Yeah.
You're not just making that up?
No. My sister, however, she said...
Hiya. To answer your question, I don't pee in the shower. It's not something that I feel comfortable with. It just doesn't feel right. It would be the same as peeing in a swimming pool, and it would actually fill me with dread, the thought that somebody had done that. So I don't, personally.
Fair enough.
Right?
Yeah. Who else did we have? Oh, so we had this man write in, but he also got his wife to write in separately.
Okay.
And this was their response.
Hi, Kyle. Peeing in the shower is disgusting. I'd be really mad if Jay peed in the shower. Having said that, once we were on holiday in a caravan and didn't have a toilet, but it did have a shower, and I peed in the shower in the middle of the night because I didn't want to leave the caravan and go to the manky, composting toilet. And then Isla had a massive paddy at me, and she wouldn't go anywhere near the bathroom or the shower for the rest of the holiday. But yeah, other than that, I would never pee in a shower, and if Jay peed in the shower, I'd be pretty pissed off.
Hi, Kyle. Absolutely not. I do not pee in the shower. I don't see any reason to pee in the shower because when I get up in the morning, I usually need to go to the toilet straight away. I don't need to jump in the shower straight away. Yeah, no, I don't pee in the shower. There you go.
Fair enough. One more.
As a rule, I do not pee in the shower. However, I have peed in the shower in the past. Scott said the same, although his kind of wide-eyed avoidance look at me says... pretty sure he does pee in the shower regularly.
And he's too ashamed to admit it. That's the thing. So
what about... Yeah, you didn't answer.
Yeah, without question, I wee in the shower every time.
Gross.
In fact, I would rather wee in the shower than wee in the toilet because then you've got to flush the toilet. I was speaking to a woman and she said she had this debate with her mother.
Why? So me and Mum have debated this, not very much, because we both agree that we do occasionally wee in the shower. I think it's quite normal, saves flushing the toilet. But I only go if I have to, like I normally, it's not a voluntary thing. Yeah, it's not a regular occurrence. You just go when you need to. But running water sends a signal to your bladder, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. There's nothing wrong if you do it. That's what I'm saying. But I try and avoid doing it.
So that's all the latest things for this week, I guess.
Yeah.
Good one.
That was good, yeah. Did you've got their permission to play this?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
There's not going to be no names. Okay. So some of the people that did write in are very close to me and Adam.
I don't know any of those people.
So some of them were a bit of a shock to him, which is going to make for a very interesting Bank Holiday Monday tomorrow.
It is, isn't
it? So, yeah, all the latest things. So you ready for this week's topic?
Yes, let's do that. I need to get back on track. So, Kyle, what are you serving up today?
So in today's episode of the Compendium, we are going to be embarking on an intriguing exploration of Scientology.
Okay, interesting.
What is your understanding of this topic?
Well, to be honest, my understanding is probably quite limited. I've probably been influenced by people saying that Scientology is really weird and bad, although I feel like it is.
Yeah.
So I know that Tom Cruise, Alec Baldwin,
I didn't know about that one.
I think it's Alec Baldwin.
John Travolta.
Elizabeth Moss.
They're big
Scientologists. I know it's got a thing with Hollywood as well, like the elite. So I feel like it's got this kind of secret, and almost like the Freemasons in terms of this underground, I don't know, it gets you further in life if you join Scientologists.
Ooh, I see. So like you get a bit of a leg up because it's all about them finding you different opportunities.
A little bit. And then the only other bit I know is about some women, another actress, I think, in America, she left it and she was sort of saying how absolutely messed up it is in terms of you have to spend a lot of money. Once you're in, it's hard to get out. But I don't know the details.
Yeah, well, you're talking about Leah Remini there, and she's actually pioneered this movement post, obviously, her leaving, which is the reason why we know so much of some of the crazy things that have happened in Scientology. And I think she's in a position where she's powerful enough that they can come after her all they want, because they have a big history of this. But she's famous enough that she'll just tell the world. So they have to, I'm going to back off a bit.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, though, out of all the different podcasts and documentaries that I've seen, they all seem to focus on a really small aspect of it. So it's going to be impossible for us to cover everything in just one episode. So I thought, let's go general for our first episode. Let's give an overview of what Scientology is all about. And then that leaves the door open for us to really hone in onto some of the interesting aspects in future episodes. So it was founded by a guy called L. Ron Hubbard in the 1950s. And it is a belief system that is, quite frankly, in my opinion, really messed up, as you've also said as well. Like, you think it's bad? It is pretty bad.
Oh, okay. And the 1950s, that's not that long ago. So it's what, 80 years old?
Oh, yeah. It's not an old religion at all.
Okay.
And of course, it's over the years, it's captivated millions. But the question is, what exactly is Scientology? Is it a religion, a philosophy, or something else entirely, like a cult?
Right, yeah.
Because you get a lot of people saying there's cult mentalities there. But because it's the first episode, let's focus on what Scientology is, what they believe, and some of their core concepts within Scientology, its origins, and also let's learn a bit more about the founder himself, L. Ron Hubbard, and what it takes for an ordinary Scientologist to
Level
like in
up.
a video game.
Okay.
Because that's what this is like. It's just mental. The hoops and the levels that these people have to go through to get somewhere. It's mental. Adam, before we dive into the history, let's first pause to examine some of Scientology's more surface elements. All right.
Are we scratching the surface here at the Compendium?
Scratching the surface. It's important that we understand a few concepts, because I think this will make it easier for us to dive in if we first understand some of these basic concepts around Scientology and its core beliefs. Let's start with something that is known among Scientologists as Dianetics.
Dianetics.
Which is basically a self-help system that L. Ron Hubbard creates and releases to the world in a book that's published in the 1950s. Now, Dianetics is a complex methodology that claims to cleanse the human mind of hidden traumas called engrams. That's another term that I'm going to explain in a second. Now, this is carried out through a process known as auditing. And when Scientologists rid themselves of these engrams, it gradually leads a Scientologist to a state called clear.
So it sounds a bit like absolving themselves of certain sins?
Rather than sins, traumas.
Traumas, okay.
Yeah. This concept of Dianetics is what will eventually evolve into Scientology. Essentially, L. Ron Hubbard himself transforms a self-help book into what is this global religion called Scientology today, which is just incredible when you think about it, right? Imagine for a second Brian Griffin. Do you remember in Family Guy when he creates that self-help book, Wish It, Want It, Do It?
Yeah.
And then you take in that, and then you're essentially creating an entire global religion out of that. That's essentially what he's done.
Oh, okay.
Which is just messed up.
Yeah.
So the word Scientology comes from the Latin for knowing in its fullest sense of the word. And the second part is Greek, to study, which symbolizes the path to enlightenment and spiritual freedom. Now, throughout its history, Scientology has been criticized for its, of course, authoritarian control, its bullying, subjugation, and also the substantial financial burdens that it places on followers that may, of course, lead many to believe that actually this is just a cult, you know? So let's take a look at some of the key concepts and that form the foundation of what Scientologists believe. These ideas are not merely theoretical, by the way. These are literally the building blocks on which Scientology has been created or constructed. So first up, I present something that is absolutely at the center of what Scientologists believe. and that is the Thetan. Now, a Thetan is the equivalent of the soul, and Thetans are said to be immortal entities which, over their vast evolution, had transcended this need for a physical form. But at some point in that history, they find themselves becoming infused with humans and have since lived attached to humans across countless lives, up until the beginning of when human beings even evolved.
Do I have a Thetan?
Yes, you have. Now, it's unclear about how many Thetans you have.
I got multiple Thetans?
I think so. And that will come clear later on when we dive into some of the revelations that Leah Remini announces.
What are their names?
Oh, well, I don't know.
I've never met them.
No.
They've been very quiet.
Apparently there's trillions of them.
There's trillions of them?
Trillions.
Wow.
They are essentially the essence of a person. They are more vital than your flesh and blood. Like a soul, but more than that.
Okay.
All right. Now, let's move on to the concepts of engrams. Now, these are the mental snapshots of painful events from a Thetan's past and their present lives. Now, in Scientology, they say that the engram influences our every emotion and even our physical health. The mission of a Scientology is to clear the mind of these engrams and, again, as I said, reach this level of clear. Scientologists can achieve the state of clear through auditing, which helps the Scientologists rid themselves of these engrams and essentially cures them. Auditing is conducted through sessions with an auditor who will then ask you specific questions while you are connected to what a Scientologist calls an e-meter. The auditor uses the e-meter to hunt for these engrams, and when they find these engrams, they neutralize them. That's the gist of essentially auditing and these engrams and getting rid of you, making you clear.
And is this like a device that they're using to...
Correct.
And what does it look like?
I'm going to show you that in a minute. So the e-meter was invented by L. Ron Hubbard himself, and it works by measuring the electrical resistance in the skin, which is said to pick up upon kind of mental changes in the patient while they are undergoing this auditing process to find these engrams. And basically, you hold on to these sensors of the e-meter during these auditing sessions. So I do have an image of you.
Oh, it looks more modern than I thought it was going to be. Maybe it's a modern version. So you've got a pair of hands which are holding these kind of metal cylinders, I guess is the best way, almost like a pepper shaker, but not like that, but that kind of stuff.
They call them the cans.
The cans.
You're holding the cans.
Yeah, but that's what they look like. They're connected to two wires which go into this machine. It's got a few dials on, but it's got one of those, what are those things called, which like
a needle.
A needle.
Yeah.
Almost like it's going to, I assume, detect your engrams or whatever, and it's going to like flicker up and down as it detects them.
That's essentially it. Yeah. I don't know what the other stuff do, but they use this essentially to find these engrams and then neutralize them. How they neutralize them, it's not quite clear.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. Zap them somehow.
I think it's just through the
Positive.
therapy. Oh, we can't say the word therapy, and I'll explain why in a minute. Now, the cost of reaching clear is not just a metaphorical journey, but it's also a very expensive journey too, because as a Scientologist, you are required to progress through various levels of auditing, following what they call the Bridge to Freedom framework.
Bridge to freedom.
We'll explain it all later, but that's what they have to do. And of course, this takes years and can cost upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, these levels that they have to level up through are called Operating Thetan levels, or OT levels for short. Now, these levels are supposed to represent higher states of spiritual awareness and abilities. The ultimate level of these levels is OT 8, which is like the pinnacle of spiritual attainment. But reaching it, of course, requires extensive auditing and, of course, a shit ton of money. So now we have a new concept I'm going to give to you, and that is the Sea Organization. Commonly, they are referred to as the Sea Org, and they are literally the church's military function, right? Imagine a navy, uniforms, hats, white uniforms, doing labor, saluting. So members quite literally sign a billion-year contract to sign in the Sea Org. And they are responsible for the highest levels of church management and its operations. And it's known for its wild disciplinary methods. They are just brutal, and we're going to cover some of those stuff as well in a minute. So these concepts, while they're fascinating, might leave you with more questions than answers at this point. Thetans, engrams, auditing, these are all things that have been constructed and woven together by L. Ron Hubbard himself. And to understand these concepts in more detail, I think the biggest bulk of this podcast should be focusing on L. Ron Hubbard himself and his life, and how he came to create this shit show called Scientology, because it's just mental.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what it sounds like? Almost like a real life board game in terms of that you have to get rid of your engrams, you then do some stuff to then progress a level, and then you win.
Yeah, it's the game of life. People, they invest their whole life in everything they do, all their free time, everything. Scientology, doing all of this stuff, paying more money. So, L. Ron Hubbard. He was born as Ron Hubbard on the 13th of March in 1911 in Nebraska, and the L was added later to make him sound a bit more literary.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was a thing back then with like authors and things like that. So his father was Harry Ross Hubbard, and he was a lieutenant in the Navy. Now, due to his father's naval career, the family moved from place to place, from like Guam to Santiago to Seattle and even Washington, D.C. Now, as a child, L. Ron was heavily influenced by stories his father would tell about his time in the Navy, and this fascination would play a significant role in shaping his worldview as an adult later on. Now, L. Ron kept dozens of journals where he would create these grandiose stories from his own imaginary adventures. And at 18, L. Ron tried to join the Navy, but he is rejected after failing his entrance exams, and is also rejected due to the fact that he is short-sighted as well. So failing to get in, he decides that he's going to drop out of college, and this is where he meets his first wife, Polly, at a Maryland kind of airfield. Now, at the time, he starts to dabble in freelance journalism and eventually starts writing kind of something called pulp fiction. So these are like these quirky little mass-marketed action-packed stories that were really popular in the time, especially in place of not having any television. So by 1933, L. Ron Hubbard had become quite the successful writer, earning a penny per word. He was really good at writing across various different genres, like westerns, detective stories, exotic adventures, and even romance. However, when it comes to writing sex scenes, he's not good. And in his really early journals, when he's like 14, you can see his attempts of trying to write sex scenes, but there's large sections that are just really aggressively scratched out because, like, he knows what sex is, but he's no idea what's supposed to happen.
You just draw some pictures and figure out the rest.
So he's, maybe this happens, but maybe not.
So he's writing this at 14? Wow.
I guess you have the desire at 14, but you just don't know what makes a compelling sex story when you're 14 if you've not seen it.
No, poor Ron.
So even after he does become sexually active, he can't quite capture the nuances of a compelling kind of sex scene. But this is not to say that he wasn't good at sex, because according to some, he was quite adept at understanding kind of the female anatomy, apparently, but he just wasn't very good at writing about it. So avoid those. If you ever come across some of his writings, the sex scenes are a bit. So he then joins this fiction guild in New York, which is basically a collection of 300 or so fiction writers, and he gains a bit of a reputation as a bullshitter. And one of the other guild members, called Frank Gruber, I think is how you pronounce it, says that L. Ron was describing how he was a US Marine for 7 years, then he was an Amazon explorer for 4 years, and then he became a big game hunter in Africa for 3 years, and so on.
So he likes to talk about himself and his achievements and everything.
Yeah.
Did he actually do all those things?
Well, so Frank goes, so you must be like 83, right? And L. Ron is like, what? 83? That's how old you'd have to be to have done all those things. And of course, this does not sit well with L. Ron, who is notoriously sensitive to any kind of criticism. So between 1935 and 1936, L. Ron moves to Hollywood to try and make it as a screenwriter. And he does manage to write a couple things, but it's not really enough to sustain him financially. So he decides that he's going to relocate to be close to his parents just outside of Seattle, where he focuses on writing novels. He also starts to get interested in marketing, and he tells his wife, Polly, I have high hopes of smashing my name into history so violently that it takes legendary form. And in many ways, that's exactly what he does. But what a line, hey?
Yeah. Who quoted that? Who wrote that?
I think that's just what he wrote. Like, he's a prolific writer, so there's lots.
Sounds like he likes himself a lot as well.
Oh my God, he is the biggest egomaniac ever. So by 1939, L. Ron has shifted his focus to science fiction, and his writing ends up impressing an editor of the Astounding Science Fiction magazine. And his stories then end up becoming like a staple of the magazine. They're in every week's edition. But by 1941, during World War II, L. Ron successfully enlists in the Navy, despite obviously previously failing. I guess, Mike.
They need people.
They need people, yeah. So L. Ron is commissioned as a junior grade lieutenant in the Naval Reserve, which is important because later on, his followers will literally write into history that he was like a master mariner and a war hero, but he's just a reserve. He's actually discharged after accidentally entering into Mexican waters and using some of the islands as target practice. But after the war in 1945, L. Ron finds himself back in Los Angeles, and here he meets a guy called Jack Parsons. He is incredible. He is a self-taught chemist, and he's also one of the very first people in the world to be meddling with kind of some of the early prototypes of rockets at Caltech University. He's got like a guild of men that he works with, and they're like really pioneering at the time. But Parsons is also a massive sci-fi geek as well. He's like one of the early proponents of kind of the genre. And he also dabbles in the occult as well. He was a devotee of Aleister Crowley. Now, Jack is infamous for throwing these decadent parties, which include these drug-fueled partner-swapping orgies. And he also turns his 11-bedroom mansion into kind of this artist compound called the Parsonage, where he just invites all these really amazing, like, pioneers of the age to live and just be themselves.
And then do it.
And probably do it, yeah. Probably not for that purpose, but
Okay.
just to surround himself with real incredible people.
Okay.
And he knows who L. Ron Hubbard is, and he loves sci-fi.
Okay.
So after a chance encounter with L. Ron, he invites L. Ron to come and live at the estate. At this time, L. Ron is starting to wear like military uniforms all the time. Like
Why?
a fucking douchebag. I don't know.
Okay.
I guess it's like a prestige thing because you were in the Navy and then the wars ended and then you have this prestige that comes with it and you want to be recognized for it all the time. But he was only ever just a reserve, so he's wearing these stupid uniforms.
Was that quite common for the time then?
I think because he's such an egomaniac.
Right, okay.
While he's like living at the estate, he just enthralls everyone with these fantastical stories of his military adventures that obviously never happened.
I was going to say, apart from what happened in Mexico.
Exactly.
That's it.
So for instance, he talks about how he escaped the Japanese by escaping on a raft after being shot and having all these bullet holes in him and having his feet crushed and all the bones in his feet were broken, but he managed to escape on this raft. Obviously,
Wow.
none of this happened.
What an imagination.
Well, I mean, that's what he's known for, right? He's a brilliant writer. So in 1946, L. Ron convinces Jack to invest in a new business venture with him. And the arrangement is theoretically 50-50. But in reality, Jack invests $21,000 while L. Ron invests like $1,200. So it was more like a 90-10 split. But L. Ron takes his money along with Jack's girlfriend, Sarah Northrop, and he relocates to Miami. Now, the aim is to purchase luxury yachts, sail them to Los Angeles, and then sell them for a profit to rich Californians. But L. Ron ends up marrying Sarah Northrop, despite still being married to his first wife, Polly.
Hang on. So he's taken his friend's wife or girlfriend, which
As like a business kind of partner
And
to help
then-
him out.
sort of cheats on his wife, and she cheats on Jack.
Yeah.
And he gets married more than once.
He's now a bigamist. I think
Yeah.
not legally, he's not technically married to Sarah, but
Okay.
I think maybe he ends up getting married to her, but after finally divorcing his wife. So, of course, Jack is pissed off and he obtains a court injunction preventing L. Ron from leaving the country with his assets. And eventually, L. Ron is forced to pay back all of Jack's money because he's obviously threatened with kind of legal action. So, fast forward to 1949. L. Ron sets his sight on the self-help genre. In a letter to his literary agent, this is a guy called Forrest Ackerman, L. Ron states that his book would enable its readers to rape women without their knowing and communicate suicidal messages to your enemies in their sleep.
What a loser.
He is a loser. So he sends this self-help book to the American Psychological Association to get their mental health endorsement. And they're basically like, lol, no. And this, of course, infuriates him and will become a huge factor in Scientology's aggressive opposition to all forms of psychology and psychiatry later on. So in 1950, his self-help book is formally published and it's titled Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health. Now, the book claims that its creation of Dianetics is a milestone for humanity which is comparable to the discovery of fire and even superior to the invention of the wheel and also the arch. So he's such an egomaniac.
Comparing himself to the wheel.
So bizarrely, Dianetics is marketing itself as superior to traditional therapy and psychiatry. Again, it's not so because what's happening is that when the American Psychological Association rejects Elron's book, he decides that if I can't join your club, I'm literally just going to create my own far better thing. So his book is going up against like science that has literally been around for decades. So it's a brave move coming in to say, this is better than all these scientists and these big pioneers like Freud and Carl Jung and things like that. And also, through this positioning, Ron starts to develop this kind of smear campaign against all forms of psychology. And is the reason why Scientologists today are so staunchly opposed to any form of psychology or psychiatry.
Isn't this just a form of psychology and psychiatry?
Well, in the early days, Elron claimed that Dianetics was built upon the works of these notable psychologists like Freud and Carl Jung as pioneers in the field. But in later editions, he removes this acknowledgement completely. And the reason is because he's no longer promoting a self-help book. He's starting to center Dianetics around a new religious movement. So it can't be the same as, it has to be its own thing so he can market a religion around it.
Sure, but he's clearly admitted that it's been inspired by something. And then he's now
he's now saying it's not. It's its own thing altogether. I think it's because he's butthurt and also his clever marketing. He's trying to make it unique. Its own thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, the fascinating distinction is between psychology and Dianetics lies in their approach to the mind. Now, psychology often asserts that the mind is this intricate, delicate thing where certain neuroses can deeply embed themselves into kind of your psyche and can be really challenging to fix. But on the other hand, Dianetics states that a person can be born with these mental impairments, aka engrams, but Dianetics can effectively cure these rather than treat them. And that's his positioning.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So Dianetics is offering a super accessible solution that is significantly cheaper than years and years of therapy. A 5-week course of Dianetics and a bunch of auditing is like $500 at a time, when a therapy session with a psychiatrist is just $10. But unlike psychiatry, Dianetics promises to cure you, whereas psychiatry will go on for years and years and doesn't promise a fix. So what are you going to go for if you get presented with, well, pay $500 or pay $10 a week for the rest of your life for the next 5 decades?
Sure.
So by 1951, Elron starts to make a bit of money from selling Dianetics and begins setting up auditing centers all over the country. But he's notoriously terrible at running things and starts hemorrhaging money left, right, and center. So, facing potential bankruptcy, he shifts his focus to his second book, titled The Signs of Survival. And in 1952, this is when he introduces the revolutionary new piece of tech called the e-meter. Here's the beautiful thing. In regards to doing actually what it says it does, the e-meter has been part of this huge, extensive legal debate over the last 3 decades. And it's all accumulated in the federal courts literally ordering the church to publish disclaimers that state that the e-meter alone does nothing.
Well, I was just wondering what it actually does. What is actually triggering that needle and stuff?
It's measuring something, electrical pulses, but they have no connection to anything, no thought
thoughts
or anything.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's just some kind of impulse or whatever your body's doing.
It's nothing. So literally, they are forced now to disclaim or put a disclaimer on the product saying that it can't enhance health at all. And they end up saying that instead, it's only used specifically for spiritual purposes only. So they have to acknowledge that by court order that it does nothing.
There's no science in this.
But it's used in part of our ritual. But yeah, what message does that send? Any rational person would be like, so it doesn't do anything. Can we just leave this outside?
Yeah.
Can we have just a therapy session?
Let's just light a candle. It's some incense.
Yeah. Now, finally, in 1951, the term Scientology is coined.
Why Scientology?
It means the study of knowledge. So according to Elron, while Dianetics provides a way to understand the human mind, Scientology offers a path to understanding the human soul. It says that it's the Thetans and signifies kind of life and its innate self. In summary, the Thetans are beings that have been separated from their physical bodies over kind of eons and eons. And they are the things that ultimately created the universe. But over time, the Thetans ended up being trapped in their own creation, eventually losing their original universe-creating abilities. So Elron says that the primary goal of Scientology is to restore the lost abilities of these thetans. And this is achieved through ridding yourself of engrams, through auditing, and the utilization of the e-meter. So if you find that confusing, you're not alone.
I was going to say, what?
It's nutso.
What I'm getting is you are using their technology and their treatments to basically get rid of things that are setting or perhaps are not progressing or allowing you to progress forward or holding you back, i.e. your reaction to maybe doing certain things because of a past trauma. And so by removing them from your life, you're going to be better equipped or suited to be a better person.
I couldn't have explained it better.
Well, do you know what? I gave that advice for free. I should be charging.
You should be. So in 1952, L. Ron founds the Hubbard Association of Scientologists, which is essentially a training facility, a book publisher, and the exclusive seller of the e-meter. That same year, he marries his third wife, 19-year-old Mary Sue Whipp, and also revises his biography, painting this fantastical version of himself, where he claims that he studied under monks in Asia, volunteered in various psychiatric hospitals. Obviously, all of this is false.
I was going to say, he did none of this.
He has major control over his narrative and major control over all of Scientology and what people think and critics and everything. It's crazy the lengths that he goes to rewrite history in Scientology's favor. So a year later, in 1953, L. Ron shifts his marketing strategy. Now, instead of promoting Scientology as a less expensive alternative to traditional therapy, he is now positioning it as a premium service, suggesting that the teachings of Dianetics is so good and so valuable that it warrants this higher price.
Okay.
So he ends up franchising, and he lets people buy the rights to open up their own Dianetic centers. But they, of course, have to buy all the books and all the e-meters directly from the Hubbard's Association of Scientologists. So that's how he's literally making his money, by opening up these other centers and franchising the movement, essentially. Mm-hmm. In a letter to an early associate, he openly states that he wanted to work the religion angle of the Hubbard Association of Scientologists, admitting that it was a matter of practical business. It's just incredible that despite this being in the public domain, people still believe this bullshit. Like, he's openly said that it's just a matter of business. Like, he needs to turn this into a religion to make more money.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, he was really interested in marketing. This is all marketing. So how much of him is about making money and how much of it is actually wanting to help people?
Well, I think a lot of it probably comes down to money. And he'll probably argue that the more money that he makes, the more he's able to help people.
Yeah. But you're almost like getting this subscription service where you have to you almost like Ryanair. You buy a Ryanair ticket, but then you have to pay for baggage, and then you have to then do this for your ticket, and then everything else. You get hooked in because in order to take that service, you're you have to,
Everything comes down to money. For example, someone will reach a certain level, right? And then they'll turn around, they'll get to the next level, and they'll be like, oh, you failed this one. What we recommend is that you go back to level X, Y, or Z, or whatever, and do those courses again. But we've revised the courses, and there's a whole new set of books. So we recommend you buy those books. And these books are like $50,000. So then have to buy these books again. And sometimes there'll be nothing that's hardly changed.
But they're like saying, oh, by doing this, you'll have a much better chance of passing because why did you give me this book in the first place?
Well, because it hasn't been, it's a revised edition. So L. Ron transforms the mental kind of science buhaki into essentially a religion, which eventually will grant Scientology tax exemption status, just like any other religion.
Really?
Yeah. They don't achieve this until after he dies, I think in 1993 by David Miscavige, but they get it. And it comes with huge benefits because it also means that they don't have to disclose certain things in court or when investigators come in to audit their books. They can say, well, this is like private under kind of the religious status exemption that we have, which they play the game themselves. They use the law to help protect themselves later on as well.
It makes you think, like, why isn't someone like Elon Musk or, I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg said, or Facebook, it's a religion. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This feels like one of those kind of people
That argument has been made with some other people.
Really?
Yeah. Like the reason why they've fallen or not been successful is because they didn't turn their movement into a religion.
Oh, my word.
It's crazy. Yeah. And what's crazy about achieving this kind of religious status is it means that these auditors do not have to meet the same educational requirements that are certified by actual real counselors. Because, of course, you don't need any of that if you're a religion. A pastor doesn't need a degree. So in 1954, the first church of Scientology is opened, and L. Ron insists that the other Scientology groups around the country also become churches, which require that 10% of their gross income has to now be paid to the Hubbard Association of Scientologists. So he is now effectively functioning as the mother church with all these different franchises underneath him. In 1956, Scientology's income was $103,000, but by 1959, it was like $250,000. But that was literally just the beginning. By 1960, L. Ron had replaced most of his initial followers, most of whom had just become like disillusioned by his teachings, likely because like it was just so weird and bizarre. Like progressively, the stories were getting weird and odder.
They realized you're lying.
Yeah, essentially.
Like, this guy hasn't got a clue. Why am I following him?
Exactly. And the reason why it was getting so weird is because during the decade of the 1950s, he wrote a lot of really odd science fiction, which he was priming on becoming the church's origin story.
Origin story?
Yeah. The Christians had the Bible, Muslims had the Quran, Scientology needed their own mythos. That's what he's doing at this time. And people are going, this is a bit odd. So L. Ron was becoming increasingly more and more paranoid and distrustful of his followers. And he started to implement more and more aggressive forms of auditing for his newer members. Basically, just like Jim Jones, he started like fishing for confessions. Had you ever stolen? Have you ever killed anyone? Had you ever been violent? They were just relentless. And they all get recorded and they all get used. If his followers become problematic, he'll use it against them.
Blackmail.
Blackmail it is. So he also works to keep church employees financially dependent, like paying them just enough to live but not enough to save, making it difficult for them to leave if they've decided to do so. And he would also require followers to invest huge amounts of money and time, like forging relationships inside the church. So if you had any free time, you had to be at church, right? If you weren't at work and you weren't with your family, you were at church. And the reason for this is that if your whole world is the church, if all your relationships, if all your friendships, your family, etc., are all within the confines of the church, then if you ever decide to leave, this poses a greater loss because you don't just lose your church, you lose your family, your friends. If you work for the church, you lose your job as well. And you don't get formal qualifications when you decide to work for the church. So if you decide to leave and you hit a certain level, you can't just get a job because you don't then have the necessary qualifications to make it out in the real world because those qualifications don't exist necessarily outside of the church.
Yeah, with you.
So how did L. Ron get away with all of this? So by many accounts, he was extraordinarily charismatic, as were all cult leaders, right? So he used tried and true cult recruiting techniques, including the allure of attractive young women who he would use to like work in these recruitment centers.
So
promo girls, essentially, yeah. Bit like more kind of sophisticated.
Not like hot pants.
Not in hot pants, probably.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, maybe.
Maybe.
So in 1964, L. Ron Hubbard is interviewed by the Saturday Evening Post, which is a real prominent publication at the time. And he genuinely believed that this would be the catalyst that propels Scientology into the mainstream. However, when the article is published, it's so critical of Scientology, labeling him a modern-day snake oil salesman. And this absolutely enrages him, and it leads him to develop something called the fair game policy.
Right.
Now, under this policy, individuals considered enemies of the church, such as those who have left the organization or anyone who actively speaks out against the church, are designated as suppressive persons. Now, Scientology's website defines a suppressive person as an antisocial personality, likening them to historical figures like literally Napoleon and Hitler.
Oh my
Right?
word.
When these are just people that just left the church.
And they don't agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, that's it. Or someone who publishes a critical article in a newspaper about you.
Not someone that's committed mass genocide.
Exactly. So under the fair game policy, these people could be pursued and harassed by literally any means necessary. And that can include being sued. They will very often take you to court because they've got the power, right? They've got the lawyers, they've got the money to take you to court, bankrupt you, your life is over.
And what would they get you on? Because you've like almost signed a contract or whatever with the church and you're not allowed to.
They'll make up lies. It's not about whether or not it's true. It's about getting you into the court system so the court can then drain you of your finances.
Wow.
And even if it turns out that it's not true at the end.
So what? They've got rid of your money. So yeah.
Exactly. Your life is ruined. So also like public defamation as well. They don't care if it's true or not. Relentless stalking, including phone tapping and harassment of their families, were all considered acceptable under this fair game policy. Now, apparently, though, in 1968, due to various governments like Australia threatening to ban Scientology, they apparently cancelled this policy. But it's all bullshit because it still goes on today. When we come on to the bit with Leah Remini later, she joins up in partnership with a guy called Mike Rinder. Now, Mike Rinder was literally working for this department.
The one that would take people down.
And he would action it all under L. Ron's instructions and David Miscavige's instructions. And they didn't cancel it. They just called it something different.
And so he's left the church.
He managed to escape.
He
managed to escape. A woman called Paulette Cooper, right? She decided to leave Scientology and publish this critique titled The Scandal of Scientology. And so in retaliation, the church operatives, they tap her phone, they break into her apartment, they literally harass her nonstop, distribute flyers that basically call her a prostitute.
Right.
And they start framing her for a whole bunch of felonies, which almost results in her being sent to prison, right? None of them are true. And when, like, you watch the documentaries about Scientology, like, you literally see firsthand how they harass former members that have been labeled suppressive persons. It's just not hard to believe any of these allegations when you see these firsthand accounts on these documentaries.
Wow.
So during this period, L. Ron acquires a collection of boats, and this is what gives birth to the notorious Sea Org. Now, effectively, he's forming his own naval force. However, to fit the image of the disciplined organization, the Sea Org had to abandon that laid-back kind of hippie feel of the 1960s. Scientologists believe they are at war to save the world. A Navy fleet filled with warrior hippies doesn't really instill fear in your enemy's hearts, does it?
No, I wouldn't say so.
So as a result, the long hair is cut short, the beards are shaven, uniforms are put on, and the higher-ups are addressed as sir.
Like a traditional kind of Navy, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also install a system of rewards and punishments. So any member who would question L. Ron or any of his teachings in any way are literally tied up in these heavy chains as a symbol of their degraded state. For a period of time, the church also punished people with something called overboarding. So basically, members would be tied up with their symbolic chains and literally thrown over the side of the ship. So they are just murdering people.
Wow. Like a cult.
Like a cult, exactly. So L. Ron is now becoming increasingly more and more elusive, even to his followers. Now, apparently, the official story is that he is embarking on some sort of spiritual quest. And they say that he literally walks through the wall of fire, which is this metaphysical barrier. And in doing so, he has acquired the secrets that are so dangerous that discovering it could potentially be lethal to an unworthy person. It's this discovery that actually becomes the first major Operating Thetan kind of level, and that's OT level 3, which is the level that most Scientologists look forward to achieving the most because it's the first major revelation about a guy called Xenu that they are given.
Xenu.
Yeah, so we'll come back to this. But with this new discovery, L. Ron also now tells his followers that they need to do more to save the universe because he's discovered this new secret, this new revelation, and it's not enough to save the universe at its current trajectory. So they have to do more.
Okay, does that involve giving away more of their money?
Possibly. Yeah, if they don't do it, there's no other hope for mankind. So across America, increased scrutiny towards Scientology is on the rise, and these entities are all deemed suppressive organizations or units. So in response, L. Ron starts to preemptively infiltrate major organizations like the IRS, and he ends up planting Scientologists within them as IRS agents, and he gets them really high up in the organization. And this is part of Operation Snow White, which is later revealed by the FBI to be the largest program of domestic espionage in US history. And Elrond's aim, essentially, is to infiltrate and then destroy any documents that criticize the church or its founder in any way. And it wasn't just the IRS that they orchestrated infiltrations and thefts from. They managed to infiltrate 136 governments and foreign embassies across the world, as well as private organizations across more than 30 different countries. And basically, the church was intent on rewriting the history in favor of Scientology.
This feels like a science fiction plot all in itself. There was something on Marvel recently which had these aliens that were infiltrating the world. They'd come to this planet, they'd been here for 20 years, and they could shapeshift. And so they could pretend that they were the president or prime minister or famous people or an Avenger and stuff like that. And so I can't believe this was real, that they had infiltrated all these different organizations to basically rewrite their history.
It just goes to show you, like, he is a science fiction writer and he's a very powerful man. Isn't it strange how your imagination can sometimes leak into reality?
And
he's made this almost reality.
Yeah.
He's done this.
But it's almost like he is so well equipped to understand other, like, trade secrets, all these kind of things. And I guess this is why people say, like, it's infiltrated Hollywood to a degree, and how it has this influence over actors and things like that in Hollywood, because perhaps he did this however many years ago. And so that could, like, persuade casting decisions, all sorts, and business decisions and things.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
No, isn't it?
I can't believe how weird this is.
So the whole operation comes to an end after the FBI raids several high-ranking members who are then all prosecuted. Among them is Mary Sue Hubbard, which is obviously Elrond's wife. She gets 5 years in prison, and Elrond only manages to escape prosecution because he's always been really careful about putting his name against anything potentially incriminating. So he escapes. So Elrond goes into exile with two of his most trusted officials, and he is literally never seen in public ever again.
No way.
Never again. So on January the 24th, 1986, at the age of 74, Elrond dies after suffering a stroke. Now,
so how long was he not in the public domain?
So he died at 86, I'm going to say 15 years.
That's quite a while to be hiding, I guess, in some capacity.
So the church scurried to hide a bunch of the church's assets, but the IRS get wind of this and they immediately accuse the church of diverting over $100 million into kind of various foreign accounts, which spurs this huge legal battle that lasts right up until 1993, when the church finally agrees to pay $12.5 million in back taxes, but they also now secure religious status, gives them protection from all bunch of things.
Convenient.
Yeah. At the time of his death, Elrond is reportedly worth $650 million, which is a staggering amount, yeah? Considering he was a struggling Pulp Fiction writer just 35 years earlier.
And that doesn't feel like someone who's head of a church would ever be like rich like that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you expect them to be like, oh, I don't need money, I don't need material goods.
Giving back and all that sort of stuff. This is not the normal kind of...
I tell you what, Adam, and again, we can't go through it in this episode, but when I was finding out about some of their real estate that they have worldwide, they buy real estate like you cannot believe. And they will open up these churches all over the place, and they'll have these big grand ceremonies, and then you'll come and visit them in 2 years, 3 years later, and they're empty.
Just got these buildings.
They just have these buildings, but they're saying that they're investing this money back into communities to help regenerate, but they're not. They're just buying up property.
What are they going to use that property for?
They're just buying it purely for the land and the value of the building.
Unless there's like an underground base where they're plotting to take over the world. There might be meth labs underneath.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were capitalizing on that, if they could get away with it.
It feels like this is a Breaking Bad episode.
So unbelievably, it appears that Elrond never appointed a successor, which I don't believe. Either these documents, in my opinion, were destroyed, or Elrond died so quickly and so unexpectedly that he just never got a chance to appoint a successor. But I find that hard to believe. Like, he was, like, when he died, he was 74. You put that in order, especially if you're the head of a massive church.
You think so? Unless someone has is fighting over who's going to be the successor.
But apparently he never appointed a successor. Right. But either way, the church is left without a leader, and so the race for the top job is on. Enter a man called David Miscavige. I love this guy so much.
Miscavige.
He is just nutso, and again, I could spend 12 episodes on this guy. This is the man that had been hiding out with Elrond when he went into exile, and he is his personal messenger, which is a powerful position to be in because it means that you have control over the information that Elrond Hubbard is able to access and receive. If he's in exile and is not seeing anyone, he's sending David off to give out messages to people. And it's really nutso as well because they'll be on these ships and Elrond would say to one of his messages, it'd be like a 14-year-old girl, and she'd be like, you go up to Lieutenant F.G. Harvard and you tell him exactly this, and you have to say it in the way that he said it. So if he's really angry, this 14-year-old girl's got to go over and she's got to try and imitate his voice and the way that he said it. So it's just really funny in my head, like a 14-year-old girl doing it. This is exactly what David Miscavige's wife would have done. So she was in the Sea Org and she was a personal messenger as well. And that's what she had to do.
Really?
And she's a young girl. It's just really funny.
That's bizarre.
So yeah, he's got control over the information that Elrond Hubbard has access to. So real briefly, just a bit about David. So he was born in 1960 and he became involved in Scientology at around about the age of 8. And what had happened is he was taken to an auditing session for his asthma. And the experience apparently cures him, leading his entire family to embrace Scientology, and they end up becoming followers. So by the age of 12, David was already auditing others. And by 13, he was administering kind of security checks to senior Scientology executives.
At 13?
Yeah, of course it's bullshit, right?
Yeah.
At 16, he joins the Sea Org, and within a year, he'd become Elrond Hubbard's personal messenger.
Okay.
By the age of 26, Dave Miscavige was one of the 2 men who goes into hiding with Elrond Hubbard just before his passing.
Oh.
So he's 26, and he's eyeing up the top job.
Oh, but he's got to wait, 10, 15, 20 years, you're saying?
Nope. David sets his sights on the top job, but he's only 26 years old. So he faces a significant challenge, of course. So Pat Brooker, who I believe that's how you pronounce it, Broker, who was actually primed for the role. He is, of course, experienced and also one of Elrond's closest confidants. And Brooker was the other person in hiding with Elrond. Now, as far as David was concerned, the only thing standing in his way was the Church of Spiritual Technology Incorporated, or the CST. And again, we could do an entire episode just on this portion of the church. This is a section of the church that controls the copyright and the licensing for all Scientology materials. Now, I don't know why, but control over the CST means control over Scientology's most valuable assets, which leads to control of the church. At the time, this was controlled by a woman called Terry Gamboa. Terry had this dream of running a horse ranch in New Zealand. David was aware of this after looking through her auditing records, and he arranges basically a fake meeting with a man who offers her a job on a ranch, leading Terry to leave her position. And this leaves the door open for David to take over the CST. Eventually, he can now take over the entire Church of Scientology. And that's exactly what he does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he's now
Head of church.
the head of the church.
Wow.
Mental, isn't it?
Yeah, that's quite a quick rise to power.
It gets so much darker because he's way less charismatic than Elrond is. He's really aggressive, super aggressive, and really ambitious. Way more ambitious than Elrond is. So some of the things that happen after Elrond dies are horrendous. People, even today, are kept as prisoner in what they call the hole. Essentially, it all started when someone had pissed him off, and they had these temporary buildings at the back as basically a prefab, like when you were at school. Went down there and he just locked them in there, and that's where they've been ever since. They come out for a shower, but then after they've had a shower, they go straight back to it and they just sleep on the floor. But over the years, that's just grown with more and more prisoners just living inside these prefabs. And there's speculation that they no longer use this anymore and that actually they spend the day in the hole, but then they can sleep in a bed at night. But I don't think that's true.
That's so weird. So that's almost like prison where you're put in confinement and
Essentially.
the hole. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially they're in prison. And these are just execs, right? They're wearing a suit. Now let's explore some of the mysterious OT levels.
Okay.
So in Scientology, the ultimate goal, as we know, is to become an operating thetan, right?
An operating thetan. That just sounds ridiculous.
So reaching this level means that you have transcended the need for your physical body and that you have evolved into a self-aware, immortal soul. And in essence, you are like godlike.
And you've probably spent like a few 100,000.
For sure. Yeah. Now, this journey is guided by what we call the bridge to total freedom, which is essentially visually represented by a flowchart divided into two parallel paths. In a nutshell, the processing path, also known as the auditing path, is focused on personal spiritual development. And the path involves a series of steps where an individual receives counseling or auditing from a trained auditor. Okay. So that's everything that we've talked about.
Right.
And the goal is to help the individual overcome spiritual obstacles called engrams and reach a higher state of spiritual awareness. This path leads the individual through the pre-clear levels, right? So I'm not quite clear yet, but I'm getting there.
Okay.
And once you've reached the pre-clear levels, you then get to a state of clear, and then you can proceed onto your OT levels. Okay, so just real quick, this is the bridge to freedom.
The bridge to freedom. Do you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of it's not, like a periodic table in the sense that it's just...
yeah, I guess you're right. It feels very scientific.
Yeah, which, makes sense. Scientology.
There's a lot of levels.
There is. So you start off at not classed.
God, don't.
I'm not going to go through them.
There's a whole episode.
And then you get to class 0, and then you get almost, it's like having karate, you get different bands, I guess, isn't it?
Exactly.
So you get from class 0 up to class 10, 11, 12. Maybe, class 12, it looks like. Wow.
It's a lot. It's very involved.
Like 15 to 20 levels.
Yeah. And that's just the training side, right? We're talking about the processing side.
Yeah, so that's training. So what, you do one side and then you do the other side?
So you do it like in a combination. So the training path is geared towards becoming an auditor. While the processing path focuses on personal spiritual development, the training path emphasizes the learning of the techniques and the skills necessary to audit others, right? Now, an individual on this path will take courses and participate in kind of exercises designed to develop their ability to understand, communicate, apply principles of Scientology to help others progress through their own processing path. Now, while the two paths are distinct, the training and processing paths are complementary.
So you'd be like, everyone does their own processing path, but you can train to be an auditor, so then you might be doing both paths simultaneously at different levels.
That's it. So many Scientologists are encouraged to pursue both paths simultaneously or alternatively, but both paths are seen as vital components of a Scientologist's journey to the bridge of total freedom. It all begins with those lower levels, which include introductory services like purification rundown and Dianetics auditing to address engrams, all that kind of bullshit. So once these foundations are laid, the Scientologist moves on to the clear level, and they start working their way through grades 0 to 4, which focuses on life aspects like communication problems and culminating like in the new era Dianetics or the NEDs. I'm not going to pretend I understand this. Now, all of this aims to reach a state of being free of engrams. When you complete this, you are then considered clear, right? You are now ready for OT levels. Okay. And this is the first major goal that most Scientologists will aim to reach. I want to get to my OT levels. So from here, the journey continues into the Operating Thetan levels. OT1 introduces the concept of operating independently of the body.
Okay.
While OT level 2 examines moral code. OT level 3, this is known as the Wall of Fire. And this is what introduces the batshit crazy story about Xenu.
Xenu. Oh, yes, the guy that you mentioned. Or I say guy.
Well, we'll see in a second.
Figure thing.
Yeah, and this is the one that most Scientology kind of followers are the most excited to learn or get, because this first revelation gets revealed to them.
And so do they know who Xenu is, or at this stage?
No, they don't. They have a concept of what the Thetan is, but they don't know what the origin story is of the Thetan. Yeah, they don't know where the Thetan came from and what that is. They know that they're immortal, but they don't know why.
God, they can't even go on Reddit to get like spoilers in this. Could you?
I ask loads of these questions and like people are like, but they're not ready for it yet. Right? They're not ready for this information, so why would you go and pursue it before you need it? But there's going to be some people that are curious.
I just want to know. Yeah, people like watch TV shows and films, and they like to be spoiled.
They do.
I want to know what's at level 12.
So OT level 4, that addresses spiritual effects of drugs and toxins. OT 5 focuses on handling body thetans. And OT 6 and 7 involve training and continuation of kind of solo auditing. So you can audit yourself now. While OT level 8 is known as Truth Revealed, and it delves into the nature of all existence, basically. And some famous Scientologists are OT 8, Tom Cruise for one of them.
Oh, he's 8, is he?
Yeah, it's quite high up. So the entire journey across the bridge to total freedom is obviously highly individual and can vary wildly in duration and cost. So it might take anywhere from just a few years to several decades, depending on things like your commitment and your progress. And in terms of cost, this estimates to be in the range of between $100,000 to $500,000 plus.
Wow.
So that's a significant amount. That's like a house that you're given to the church.
That's actually less than I thought it might be.
Really?
I thought actually you could be in the millions when you get to the higher levels.
Possibly.
I don't know.
It depends if you like, maybe this is an estimate of from
the average
start. Yeah. What about if you have to redo the levels again?
Yeah.
And remember, you've got family members as well. So you got to do it. Jimmy's got to do it.
Oh, so it's not, you don't get like a discount. Say if you got twins.
Maybe you get some kind of discount. I doubt it. So one of the key reasons why we know this is because of an actress called Leah Remini.
Yes, this is the one I know about.
Yeah. So she left the church in 2013, which is when she became essentially one of the church's biggest critics. Now, she starts revealing things left, right, and center. And obviously the church are coming after her and they are constantly harassing her. She's constantly being stalked. Yeah, but she just doesn't give a shit. Anyway, Leah Remini says that she reached OT level 3. Remember, big revelation.
Yep.
One so big and so dangerous that a mere mortal would die instantly if they were not prepared to receive it.
Instantly. They would just drop down dead.
Yes.
Because...
Adam, don't diss someone else's religion. Instantly.
I think we all know this is not a religion.
So Leah says that she is escorted to a secure room where the OT level 3 materials are kept.
Okay.
She describes the labyrinth of rooms that she has to go through, which are all locked and secured. When she finally gets to the room where the documents are held, she is chained to the table. She is then handed a single manila envelope with a single piece of paper in it, which she then reads in silence. In this instance, she has her mother with her. And the only reason why she has her mother with her is because her mother's already reached this level. Her mother's really excited. So in summary, this is what it says.
Oh, we actually know what it said.
95 million years ago, a Thetan leader of a galactic confederation of 76 planets around a star system called Xenu, that's his name, not the collection of planets.
The Thetan.
Yeah. He was facing a problem of overpopulation across his star system. His solution was to capture the trillions of Thetans who opposed him and deposit them inside volcanoes on a prison planet of TGAC, otherwise known as Earth.
Oh my God.
He then eradicated all life on the planet using hydrogen bombs, leaving only the Thetans in isolation on the planet. He then proceeds to brainwash all Thetans to rid them of their original identities and godlike abilities. So for millions of years, these Thetans wandered the planet until life springs up on Earth once again. And the Thetans then attach themselves onto the human bodies, embedding themselves into the essence of our makeup. And so, the Great Revelation provides an origin for the soul and the Thetan, which centers around this mass genocide of an evil dictator named Xenu. And that is it.
I can imagine her face going and just looking at my mum going, what, you were excited for me to read this?
Yes. Her mum's like looking at her going, did you read it?
Do you like
Do you get
it?
it?
Do you
Do you like it? And she's like, what the fuck is this shit, man? And she's asked to explain it. She's like, do you get it? And that's the thing, right? If she doesn't get it, it's her fault because she's not ready to receive the information.
So I guess at this point, I imagine the information couldn't have been that crazy to the point we're talking about how the world or how people or whatever came about soul.
I don't know.
For her was this the piece of information that made her just question everything after that?
No, I think that there was several other things.
Oh, leading up to it, okay.
Yeah.
And
she's noticing all the bullshit.
wow. Yeah, that is just a whole load. It sounds science fiction because it does sound like something that this Elron guy would have created. Totally.
Yeah. So after reading this, Leah's like, what the fuck? She's really pissed off considering the time and financial kind of commitment that she's invested over the years. She's confused by this big revelation and she doesn't actually get it, but she has to pretend that she does. So Leah's story is probably just one of the most public and dramatic of all. So she leaves the church a few years later after reaching OT level 5 in 2013. And since then, she's become one of the most outspoken critics of the church. And she's just determined to expose the church's darkest secrets, believing that she can withstand any harassment that they throw at her because she's that famous, right? They can come after her, but she'll be like, I'll just tell everyone. So she teams up with that guy, Mike Rinder, who was that former senior executive of the Church of Scientology. And together they are slowly just revealing many of the church's controversial practices. And together, they've literally created this Emmy Award-winning docuseries titled Scientology in the Aftermath, which is just incredible. So Mike Rinder actually worked personally with L. Ron Hubbard, and he speaks at length in the series about the physical and mental abuse that he was ordered to inflict on members as part of the church's fair game policy. Also, another aspect that's fascinated many is the involvement of these high-profile celebrities within Scientology itself. And L. Ron Hubbard himself recognized the potential influence that celebrities could have on the church and ordered the church to attract as many of them as they could in the 1960s. And some of the most prominent names in Hollywood are like Tom Cruise, John Travolta, Kirstie Alley. They've all been vocal proponents of Scientology, and Cruise perhaps has been the most famous face of Scientology out of them all. And he's not only just praised the religion, but he's also like publicly clashed with those kind of who have criticized it in public, in interviews and things like that. Yeah. Anyone who's just questioned it, he will really come in guns blazing.
Really? Because he was married to Katie Holmes, and that was, I feel like, I don't know for sure, but wasn't that part of their sort of fallout was the whole Scientology in terms of, I'm sure it was in terms of what he wanted for their daughter. I could be wrong.
No, you're probably not though. That's the thing. You're probably not wrong. So his intense commitment and his involvement in the church is showcased perfectly when he receives the church's Freedom Medal of Valor from David Miscavige himself. David Miscavige is his best friend. They are so tightly knit together. When you find out some of the things that David Miscavige is guilty of, that will make you question Tom Cruise in a big way.
What's he guilty of?
Mate, a whole new episode. I'm going to touch upon one thing at the very end.
Okay.
So, Kirstie Alley, she's another devotee of Scientology, and she credits the church with helping her overcome her addiction, free from kind of psychology and psychiatry and everything, or Dianetics. And her transformation is often touted as a testament to the power of Scientology's methods. John Travolta, his dedication to the faith is also well known. Now, stories have circulated about how the church has supported him during, obviously, his personal tragedies, and how that helped him solidify his faith in the church. However, Leah Remini, she told the world in an interview with Joe Rogan that John Travolta has been given the title of Kakan, which means that he has the authority to commit murder. She says that part of the Scientology's ethics protection and responsibility for leaders policy, that this means that if you are a Scientologist and you walk in and see John Travolta has killed someone, you are essentially compelled to do whatever is necessary to protect John as a leader and get rid of that body and carry on acting as if nothing has happened.
So how do we know about this? Is this for Leah?
This is all through Leah.
Fine. Because I was just like, if people knew about this, this is ridiculous.
I mean, it might not be true. I mean, she's the only one that we've got, but she's also the closest link, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not like she needs to struggle to find weird crap to say about Scientology. There's enough of that already.
And I don't know if you've seen John Travolta recently, because he's like in his 70s.
He looks like a villain now.
No, but he's shaving his head. But he looks like 50. He looks really good for a 70-year-old.
You think it's got something to do with Scientology?
Yeah, it's all the people he's killed.
God. So finally, I want to touch upon what I think is the most interesting controversy of modern day Scientology, and that is Leah Miscavige,
Okay.
who is the wife of David Miscavige and who has been unexplainably missing from the public eye since 2007. And there is footage that suggests that the last person to see her alive or her in public, one of them is Tom Cruise in a video.
Really?
So rumors and speculation about her whereabouts have led to literally widespread discussion with former members of the church and critics expressing, like, where the hell is she? They want to know. This is a woman that has been very rarely seen without David. They've always been by each other's side since they were children. So for her to now just be all of a sudden missing, and for her to be such a really high-functioning member of the religion.
And it's 16 years she's been missing.
I think they say that 2005 is when she last was seen in public.
Okay.
But yeah, around about that time. So some believe that she's been kept in seclusion or is being punished somewhere deep within the organization. Some people think it's at the CST, that technology thing that we talked about earlier on, that she's there. But yeah, no one's seen her at all. Now, the controversy around Leah Miscavige's disappearance has added to an already complex and often contentious relationship between the Church of Scientology and also the public in general.
Yeah.
So the church's secretive nature and the treatment of its members, especially those who decide to leave the organization, is just appalling. Several media outlets and individuals have tried to investigate Shelley's whereabouts, Leah Remini, like to a major degree, but they just keep coming up with nothing definitive. The police are telling her there's nothing to see here.
So there's someone in the police then clearly that...
Yes, they're all in on it. They're all in cahoots with the church. They're protecting the church, or they're saying it's not my jurisdiction and we can't investigate. Or like, we've gone down to the compound and we've seen her, we've spoken to her. Okay, what does she say? That's classified.
That is so messed up.
Mate, it's messed up.
This definitely feels like a science fiction movie.
So, where is Shelley? That's it. But anyway, for now, that is the story of Scientology.
That is just bonkers. I still have more questions. I don't know. We're not going to be able to answer them. But how? I mean, it's weird because Tom Cruise, I watched the recent Mission Impossible. I'm not necessarily a massive Tom Cruise fan. But then you appreciate all his stunts and everything. But then you remember, he's a Scientologist. I didn't realize just how messed up it was, in my opinion. If you're a Scientologist out there, you know, this episode probably isn't for you.
No. The crazy thing about Tom Cruise and him being on these sets is that he brings his Scientology crew with him. All his help and his entourage are all Scientologists. And they don't say no to him. You're not allowed to. He's so high up in the church. So if he says you're out in the middle of the desert in Nevada or whatever, and he says, I want a mini mega Milky Mocha Choco with double ice. And they're like, where am I going to... No, there's no Star... You don't say no to Tom.
You create Starbucks.
You build Starbucks if you need to. You don't say no. And it's nutso.
You think that these people would just have a bit more of a brain cell. Why are they bought into this? I just love to know how they've managed to get so involved. Because I get the principle how maybe these things that you can do, you can better yourself and be, I understand the very early concepts of what this was. But what it is now...
I can answer the question, but I can't answer the question for you now because we're just out of time.
All right, fine.
But there is an answer and there's a belief system and people believe it. And there's reasons. But anyway.
Reasons. That's the answer.
We have to leave it there for now.
Okay, fine.
But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that today.
That's good, yeah.
Outro?
Yeah.
So that brings us to an end of another episode of the Compendium, an assembly of fascinating and intriguing things. We hope you've enjoyed our dabble in today's story. If you did, please subscribe, leave us a cheeky 5-star review, and why not schedule episodes to download so that you never miss a moment. It helps us trick those algorithms and helps us to continue to grow the show. You can follow us on Instagram at the Compendium Podcast, or if you have a burning question or a comment, then you can connect with us through our website at thecompendiumpodcast.com. We really do love hearing from you. We release every Tuesday, so join us for next week as we unravel yet another intriguing story from around the world of the fascinating and intriguing. And I guess until then, stay curious. See ya.
See ya.